This is probably the penultimate discussion for the day. It's been quite an exciting, intellectually stimulating day for all of us. But on the topic of noun versus verb, how many of you know what food delivery is? You can raise your hands.
Look at the headroom we have, Ashu.
Yeah, this is so good. How many of you know what Swiggy is? Perfect. That's why this is such a hard panel to, or hard discussion to have, because we're not going to talk about Swiggy at all. This is not the
Just a
topic.
little bit.
Yeah, maybe to reduce our customer acquisition cost. I think for those of you who are not already on Swiggy, please download. I think, but yeah, I think look, we all know Harsha for him having founded Swiggy, for him having grown it to where it is today. Millions of customers, millions of orders per day, hundreds of thousands of restaurants on the platform, hundreds of thousands of delivery personnel, hundreds of cities across India, and so on. But like all brilliant people, Harsha is, in my view, multifaceted, and he doesn't think of only a single problem at a time. He can think of multiple problems, and not all problems need to have a economic benefit aspect associated for him. Some things he does for social benefits as well. And what we have in mind in terms of topic that is to be discussed falls at this point in time in that bucket. And it's a topic which is kind of very aligned with what Unboxed Bangalore is, what Bangalore Hubba is, which is trying to, at least in some way, shape, or form, make Bangalore more livable, more fun, more joyous for at least 15, 20 days in a year. And so the topic we'll discuss is the future of cities in general and future of Bangalore in specific, hopefully. And this is something that over the last year, maybe 18 months, uh, we've been discussing. I've seen Harsha sort of has many ideas on the topic, but then also over time, I've seen him grow in terms of passion for this topic. And so I thought, who best to speak on this than someone like Harsha, who has all the tech chops, who has all the intelligence, and who's passionate on this topic. So, Harsha, maybe let's, in the beginning, where do we want to start? Maybe we can start with why and how of livability. Like, why did you get excited about this in the first place? Take some time, set the context.
Sure. Thanks, Ashu. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining in today. Before we even go into the conversation, maybe some caveats. I'm hardly an expert or an authority on this space. It just happens to be something that I'm deeply passionate about. And this year has been a busy one. The last 12, 18 months have been a busy one. But there are some of these topics that I definitely hope to act on in the next few years. We have some broader plans I've discussed with Ashu as well about Swiggy's overall role also in making some of this happen. So a lot of whatever I'm going to talk about is a collection of inspirations from across the world. And it's already exciting to see what, let's say, especially Prashant, Malini, Bangalore Unboxed are already executing on it in small ways. I think if I go back to, the overall inspiration, etc., I think the first root cause, and there are only a couple of Swiggy plugs in the whole conversation today, but I think the first one is, as a company for us, our mission statement is Swiggy's unparalleled convenience for urban consumers. And that's really something that we live, breathe, very, very excited about doing that. And, even for our 10th anniversary, when we had like buses of people going from the office to like a venue, which was on the other side of town. Not even other side, actually, it was 9 kilometers, but it took like an hour, 20 minutes to go there. And it just reminded me why we exist in the first place, because I think life is not easy in general in the cities, and just traveling 9 kilometers was an explanation for why we exist. And just being around in traffic, living through the Indian cities is it's constant inspiration for us, saying life is hard, we need to make it better. We need to give time back to consumers. That is like the core theme. And I always had that, narrow vision, the unparalleled convenience in the way that we do through the services that we do. So that was a narrow view of at least how I was thinking about what we were doing and getting excited by it. But this whole urban livability concept, because today I think our business helps despite the lack of livability. But I hadn't thought that much about like, okay, how can you actually make it more livable? A lot of these actually just came from reflections happening on some travels. I think there were 3, 4 travels that I did over the last 1, 2 years with my family, and I just looked at things that I hadn't maybe differently in the past. I think small things. We were in Mauritius for a 4, 5 day trip, and even over there, as we were just traversing the road from the airport, you could just see like even the poorest of fishermen just actually only having to cross the road on the coastal road to get a tipple with 4 of their friends under the coconut tree on the beach. Or let's say if we went to any of the European countries in the world, like or a lot of other countries as well. Even there are so many montages that you see of, let's say, a poor couple don't look like they have a lot of means, but they're holding hands and people watching and getting a moment in a plaza. So, but when you look at or the walking districts that you have everywhere, so there are a lot of things that even the poorest folks enjoy. That doesn't have anything to do with economic strata. Whereas maybe in India, I think even the richest person needs to get a flight ticket and go to Goa or go to some other place in the hills to just catch a moment. And we all too often keep hearing stories. I've had so many friends in Bangalore. Whenever we meet, they say their parents come and they come for maybe 3 days. And after showing them like the top 2 restaurants and the top one mall, they're running out of stuff to show their family. And they're like, what else? Is it this? So all of these were generally, propelling me in a certain direction, saying, no, I think we are going to get all the economic growth that we will as a country in the next 1, 2 decades. I just felt like, yes, we should be greedy for that. We should grow the GDP per capita, overall get wealthier as a country, but only that seems like a problematic thing. How can we actually make people enjoy living in the cities a lot more than we do? Was the genesis of this thought, which I've constantly been thinking of. So, the connection for Swiggy as well is really more on an everyday basis. We're delivering like little lifts through, let's say, the services that we give that give a little bit of joy, a little bit of time. In the medium long term, I hope we can deliver little lifts not just to our consumers, but in some way figure out a way to create more smiles, because I think one of the ways the work that we're doing, I call it little lifts. And because I think as we should, the first important problems that India should be solving, the government should be solving, is reducing frowns, saying less congestion, less pollution, all of this. But I think we can also be greedy and ask for more smiles and not just less frowns. That more smiles part of it is what really I'm passionate about. Nobody is solving for it. Everyone's solving all those important problems. Maybe this problem is not as important as that. I just feel deeply passionate for it. Less frowns in isolation is not enough.
That's amazing. I remember early on we used to have food delivery in 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. To now when we have our grocery delivery in 4 minutes on Swiggy, or 5 minutes sometime. And look, the little lifts are clearly working. It's quite exciting to get that bar of chocolate in 4 minutes and sort of in my tummy in the next 5. So it's truly exciting. But Harsha, let's take a step back. In your analysis of the situation, will this not get solved automatically as GDP grows, or does one need to be intentional about this? As the discretionary income grows, people's demand for quality life will be higher, and therefore the market forces will solve for livability.
I don't think so. If you look at the last 10 years, I think there has been economic growth, but all of us have seen Bangalore maybe 10 years back in Bangalore now. I shudder to think of people who lived Bangalore for 40 years, 30 years, and who've seen the entire projection. If anything, this economic progress is only leading to more pain and is not leading to automatically more gain on this part. All of our economic growth is, contingent on the cities. The cities are our engines of economic growth. And as we see more economic growth, unless we do something deliberate and violent about it, we're headed for more pain. That is, I think, the default status we're headed for.
And that's because our growth is heterogeneous. It is certain level for the top and there's certain level for the bottom, and both, unlike let's say US, both don't align, and therefore there's the hope for a common infrastructure is hard.
I mean, there are multiple reasons for it, I'm sure, Ashu, but with economic growth is bringing population densities, bringing more vehicles on the road, all the byproducts of all of these, which are causing the problem. That is, I think, the biggest cause for concern. And in a world where, let's say, public transport and infrastructure is still catching up with all of this economic growth and is in constant mode of catch up, unless the catch up gets solved, this isn't going anywhere. Actually, I want to understand like more about heterogeneous versus.
No, I was just thinking, like, for example, in the US, it's a reasonably, I would say, homogeneous. When you get to, I don't know, $40,000, $50,000 per capita average, everyone's expectation of a 6-lane highway, and those things become important in life. But for us, for a section of society in Bangalore who's not so fortunate, maybe their expectation for a road is not that much, but their expectations for food is probably higher than a road, and therefore that there's a mismatch in some sense.
Correct. That is one, but I also think that it is just really the growth brings with it its challenges, and I think we also have problems of space. I think in density, as you think about the population, if you put the population map of India versus, let's say, the space that we have, that's also very differently skewed. I think that growing population is going to be another one that is going to compound the problem. I think from a heterogeneous and homogeneous, I haven't had so many big thoughts on it, but there were some new sparks in a conversation I was having a few weeks back. The reason why all of this is important is not just, hey, like, is it like some first world need of just more smiles and more enjoyment? I actually think with this growth, even the GDP per capita average may grow, but economic equality also compromises when countries go through these journeys. But I feel like the perception of economic inequality goes up even higher when, let's say, the poorer sections don't have, let's say, that basic livability that we have. Like I was saying, the example of, let's say, the fishermen in Mauritius or the poor couple, I think, yes, economically their earnings are not equal to, let's say, a different strata. But I think the quality of life, however, is, yes, I mean, they will have bigger cars and better buildings, but the common infrastructure that they enjoy happens to be of a pretty high bar. I think that, I mean, there were these conversations that were sparked saying the economic inequality, this can spark like social unrest or things like that, but left unaddressed and then having this additional problem increases the chances of, the pain that may happen. Economic inequality coupled with significantly, because like you said, the rich are in gated communities, they may be still getting some moments away from the madness, but I think the poor have it very different.
That's a fair point. Where do we go from here? Because look, I mean, as a country, there's many things for us to fix. We were talking to Arvind this morning, and he was talking about sort of public transport infrastructure. We had a discussion earlier on in the day on kind of the historical context and what that means for cities versus rural population. So there's a city versus rural divide. There's the education divide, and there's only so many resources that we have as a country. How should we balance those two aspects? And sort of in that context, what role do different sections of the society have to play in this? And then maybe elaborate a little bit on sort of what you think you personally and probably Swiggy in general and sort of us as fortunate Bangaloreans can do.
Cool. So, I mean, I think there are many players in this ecosystem, and I actually think that instead of moving on to these smiles already, we have a lot of work to like reduce the frowns. Also, I think the governments I wish that the congestion reduction and the other stuff like pollution continue to be front and center. There's no world where we're going to just waltz our way into only smiles without managing this. From the government standpoint, absolutely that public infrastructure, especially in the urban economies, is going to be the most important. Public transport. I think if cities are the drivers of growth, I think economic opportunities are lost, even if it takes an hour and a half for the average individual to go across town for a commute. I think even for the economic growth of the cities, we need this infrastructure. I'm not even going into livability. So I actually think that good is when we're moving fast enough on public transport and other infrastructure and other pollution, and that is like level one. I feel the level two is what I think some governments are already starting to make moves towards. I think maybe Indore has done a solid job in, let's say, the cleanliness drive, driven by some leader earlier who set the tone and the community followed, and now it's just a beautiful example of what even India can do. Outside of that, maybe we only saw it in the Delhi metro, that stuff can be clean and look maybe second world, first world. Outside of that, I think another area which I feel as we go into the good to haves, but will be great if we can execute, are really whether it is through partnerships with corporates or whether it is on their own, figure out how to use the spaces that we have in a much, much better way than we do. I think we can use the vast number of parks that we already have to create more recreation than we do. In fact, like we have the opposite, like many rules and rules and rules around how to use it. A lot of our parks, especially the smaller ones, tend to be in shambles quite a lot. But on the other side, if you see, and that's a partnership with the foundation, but there's been some beautiful work that's been done in various cities like a Jaipur, where the local government figured out how to create like a nice social space open for everyone, where they got the masala chowk, I think it's called, if you want to look it up. So there they got like the city's most popular street food vendors and created a large open space where you could just start to see those moments happen even in an Indian city. People were having a moment not in a mall, not in a movie theater, not in a restaurant, but in a public space without too much indulgence and luxury, where you just bought some fun things, made resourceful use of a space to bring people together and enjoy the cities more. You could just see, kids running across and families enjoying their moment, all of it at like, very affordable prices. But if you go even slightly more upmarket, I think my favorite example of using the spaces that we have is the Humayun Tomb area in Delhi. I think Sundar Nursery is my favorite example of what maybe partnerships of governments and foundations or corporates or whatever you will call it. It's not super inclusive in that it's not free, but at 50 rupees, maybe they've unlocked maybe an incredible option for a vast section, even of the middle class, to be able to enjoy something even better than 90% of parks or gardens that I've seen in other parts of the world. It was just mind blowing to see that it was possible in India. We can create more walking districts. I know in Bangalore we're figuring out how to convert, let's say, the Thindi Veedi in VV Nagar into something more walkable. I think everywhere the population gets in the way, and it can be maddening. You can't just create a walking district and expect it to be used like it is in Europe. So we have to figure out those things, but I hope that they can be figured out. These are maybe the next waves. I think the first one, I think firmly on how do we tackle congestion and pollution, but start to be greedy and throw some seeds from a government standpoint on that. And as for corporates and HNIs, etc., we've had some thoughts. For us, it will be key to figure out how to create economic models that are going to be regenerative instead of just maybe making a massive donation in itself. You can start there, but for it to continue, I think we'll need to do a lot more. At least the few ideas that I've had, for the first time, we're talking about it publicly as well. I think the power of the community comes last, right? It happens actually with someone starting the catalysis and then people following and maintaining. Even in Bangalore, I think we've done an incredible job with the lakes cleanup program, connecting the lakes. And in large parts, from whatever I've heard from Malini and Naresh, etc., as well from the team, the community, once it's cleaned up, is taking a lot more ownership of keeping the spaces that have been cleaned up clean. And don't let anyone just come and do litter with it. But that's a step later. I think how to catalyze it is, I think there are many ways. At least as corporates, the blueprint we hope to execute on is, I think there are so many corporates in various areas that can adopt the areas that we operate in more meaningful ways than we do. And if it needs to be, I don't know, economically regenerating or something, I don't know how exactly, but small things, like I said, it could be a park nearby that you choose to improve the quality of a little bit more. You can add, let's say, even a couple of exercise equipment. I don't know exactly how we will maintain. There are many things. How do you add more events on these parks on a regular basis? I think if you look at the examples the world over, everything doesn't need to be super expensive. In Japan, they've basically used art to cover every manhole in major cities to create just one more smile. Maybe murals in parts of the city will create some more smiles. If there are green walls in parts of the city, that will create some more smiles. I think the people want to contribute. Very few people actually have the resources and the time to be able to focus on specific vehicles like Nitin and Nikhil are doing, with their work. But I think there are so many others who want to contribute. I wonder if there is a vehicle to be able to, one as a sponsorship, get more folks involved. I think if you look at HNIs, maybe all of us have seen in temples where there are names of the donors, who've donated money to build that temple. That was a massive flex for these families. Earlier saying, hey, that's my grandpa, this is that, we've contributed. And that used to be one way that contributions used to happen. But I think nobody, even if they want to contribute, the ones with the means want to contribute to some unknown thing sitting somewhere. Getting that touch and feel is going to be important. And I wonder if there's a way to connect folks, whether it is HNIs or companies in the area, to feel the impact right around the corner. And then be able to see that, and then be really excited about making that contribution. Our business is a hyperlocal, so I can't stop thinking hyperlocal in ways. But I do think that is true. Being able to walk out and see if someone has contributed, you take out your car and then you see, oh, this is amazing. Even if just you sponsor like a budding artist mural on the wall next door, in the next street, I think we can connect these and create more of these. But honestly, economic regeneration, how do you create it so that it just runs on its own forever, is something that I don't have fully formed thoughts on. I can naturally see that being able to improve these small touches, the furthest I've gotten is to maybe think that it probably, creates an increase in real estate prices if you make the quality. I mean, that's what the Mr. Alabar, the founder of MR Group in Dubai. I mean, it's not exactly social service, but he built some of the biggest structures for Dubai. And what I heard was the structures themselves weren't super profitable, but the real estate around suddenly became a lot more valuable. I don't know. Like, I'm still on the lookout and continuously looking for how we can make it a win-win. It just makes life easier to progress with every participant in the ecosystem.
No, I think I agree. I think both those things are very important. One is some sort of a framework or a platform for variety of people to collaborate. Of course, if it's a project that's run by the government, it's very different. And all large projects will be run by the government. But for smaller stuff, if there's a framework or a platform for variety of people to collaborate, who may all have different things to offer. Someone may have excess cash, someone may have excess time, excess talent, excess managerial capacity, excess passion. And all of them, how all of that comes together in a single unit is very important, because otherwise, for a single person to execute on something which is required across our large cities will be very difficult. The second one is leverage point. I think I completely agree. It cannot be a donation based model. There has to be some leverage on that cash. There has to be some leverage. There has to be some way in which it becomes self sustaining and sort of self-expanding. So I think both those things I completely agree with.
Absolutely. And I think it is hyper-local. I think no matter how well we solve the congestion standpoint, I think I am yet to meet very close friends who live in Whitefield for the last 3 years. sitting where I am. I think the world is going to be many, many mini cities inside the city, and it's not going to be one big Sundar nursery that solves for all of Bangalore. And I think we also have to, as India, with the space and population constraints we have, I think we may need to also think of life a little bit more vertically instead of just only horizontally getting wide spaces. So those are some early ideas saying we're not going to have everything. So with what we have, how do we make the most of it?
Personally, what's the next milestone, next unlock? What, like, how do you? And I know you're quite busy at this time. The company just very recently got listed, etc. But in your spare time, when do you think you will publicly be able to talk about something kind of concretely beyond ideas?
I think the end of next year is probably a good time. I'll need to take your permission again. Ashu is a big board member.
But no, we'll all wait for next year then, Archa. What we've discussed so far is the kind of functional aspects of livability, right? Congestion, pollution, maybe there's kind of murals on the wall, or maybe functional areas where people can come together for recreation or for having some nice local food, etc. What else in your? I mean, you're a very well traveled man. What else have you seen? What else are you excited about? And maybe this will not happen next year, but in future, as we start fixing one thing after the other, what else can we do?
I think my wildest or biggest dream is probably going to take a couple of 100 years. But I think it is possible if we figure out a way to start a movement. I think the other thing is if you look at India overall and Indian pride in India, I think it's at an all-time high. I think, Indian music is going global, Indian design is going global, Indian fashion. Like, you pick every theme, I think we're proud of our foreign affairs minister and how he's representing it. In general, collective pride in India is at an all-time high. But I think, when I look at the spaces that we have, Indian history is going into the background if you go into the cities today. Except for maybe some pockets of Rajasthan, you see like 2 streets of Jaipur or maybe all of Jodhpur, etc. I think anyone living in a Bangalore, you can tell how Bangalore is different from a Bombay, from a Hyderabad, from a Delhi in large parts. Whereas maybe every city in Europe has its own version of like their history still being present. Well, I think the first step that we can do is to stop any more damage of the beautiful spaces that we have left. That is, I think, the first step. But overall, I think one silly, crazy vision is there a way that we can use design code for Indian as an incentive to grow it back all over? There is imagine it's like a coral that has gotten bleached, but you have to start coloring it by a little bit to a point where we have a design standard for Indian this thing. If you're living in Bangalore, if you're living in a Bombay, and maybe Airbnbs that follow the design code get 20% more than a regular Airbnb. That's an incentive. I don't know what other economic incentives there can be, but even if, let's say, 5%, 10% of, let's say, the city brings back some old character back, and the elevation of the cities can start reflecting the history of the city some more, even if it is not 600 years old, but you start recreating that pride, I think we'll have a lot more pride. I think it's out there. The pride is not in the cities. In the cities, it's showing vertically with big corporate offices and bigger buildings and taller. But I think the pride of a lot of other countries is there in their history being out there. So, yeah, if I had like one magic wand, maybe I would love to see a path to regrowing some of that in the cities.
Yeah, and we as a country with such a rich, such a deep and such varied history that
Nobody visiting the city can tell that
exactly.
we have any history at all.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, I said if you can find a way to sort of bring that back, would be amazing. I think now is a good time. Yeah, now is a good time probably to kind of open it up to the audience. While I was limited in terms of the topic, I think you can be unlimited. So please feel free to ask questions for free as well.
you. Hi, Harsha.
Hey,
You touched about the capacity to have moment and how history, the patina of history is being lost found in Rajasthan and not in Bangalore. You know, I found it in Calcutta where people do addabazi. I found
Calcutta and Goa have some,
Calcutta,
but
and
economic growth.
I've seen it Varanasi,
Yeah.
where people who come to the ghats are mostly local.
Yeah.
What I've seen common is essentially the lower economic strata people who they want to have a quiet moment, they come to the local places.
Correct.
Idea of status in higher income class is still exclusionary. We want to go to Naru Noodle Bar, not to the Vidyarthi Bhavan. So maybe that is the core problem. Our idea of status is not to be inclusive, but to be very exclusionary, excess. Like, maybe that's the core reason our cities are not livable. Like in San Francisco, you can do busking in the Castro Street, and almost everybody enjoys it. But we don't see that in India.
You think that's because
Yeah.
the
Do you
rich
think-
don't
yeah.
want it to be?
Yeah, I think people are more exclusionary. Like even our logos are.
How
like,
does this show up? Like,
I mean, all of our city logos are I love NY ka copy.
right?
Most of our city logos are a blatant copy of I love NY.
Yeah.
So because we want to do a virtue signal, status signal by doing that. Maybe that's why our cities are not livable.
Thank you.
Hi. Very interesting topic. In fact, I came for today, and you said from Whitefield, so I came from Whitefield. But it was fairly okay. So what I wanted to actually, really speak about is, I think in Bangalore, in private spaces, we have everything of international standards, right? Whether it's the mall, the villas, the tech parks. I think you don't have a thing. It's really the public places that sort of
Absolutely.
need that. So
Absolutely.
I think the emphasis has to be more on developing the public spaces to make it, whether it's the park, the lake, the temple, the streets. I think there has to be a very focused approach to really make public spaces thing, and I think that really will determine the way the city will bring back that whatever thing that you're saying. And I think everybody needs, like you're saying, a platform. Everybody has to be talking about this as, let's create our public spaces, make it, whether it's the Europe country or the other country. The other thing is, just like Swiggy has cracked that, how we don't know where the food is coming from or how it is. The whole logistics is there. So those kind of things need to be done for our other services also. Like I would just, since I sort of work in the space of waste management, that kind of logistics. Why can't I know when is my garbage auto coming? When I can know when Swiggy is coming, why don't I? Why is that? Means technology is there. Everybody knows how to do it, but why? How can we influence that to get that kind of a service for public services also?
I love it. I think these are the things that, some of these things that we can help with more organically, basis what we know. Not knowing enough about the actual logistics and the complexities, these are things that we could be doing, should be doing as a part of our broader plans. We're 10 years in to the company, and now thinking as we go into the next 20, truly hope that we can do a lot more beyond just the services. And this totally sounds like one way we could do it.
Yeah. So I just hope. Happy to sort of.
I'll
more
come
and-
connect with you
Thank
immediately
you.
after.
You're absolutely right. I think the technology is there. That's not the problem.
Oh, right. I have a question regarding the statement that you made, where most cities, or at least cities of a certain kind, like Bangalore, Bombay, Hyderabad, have a homogenized look about them, feel, aesthetic, all of that. Is that a function of development? And two, how do we bring in individualization to the city? How does Bangalore become a certain kind of Bangalore? Because I have lived in this city all my life. I'm 28 years old, and I don't know what it means to be a Bangalorean any more than someone who's just arrived in the city. Because that's what the city has meant to me. It's just a place I have lived in. I don't know what it means to be quintessentially Bangalorean. So what does it mean for the city to be quintessential?
Yeah, I think both of
I'm
us.
from Vijayawada. I have better answers for that. No, but honestly, I mean, are you questioning if some cities can be quintessential?
I'm questioning whether there can be a quintessence to a city.
There can be, and it's not even that distant. We're not going back 200 years to imagine what, let's say, the cities were like, right? I think even 20, 30 years back, there were the things that made Bangalore. I think there is rich culture in the cities through the years. I think there have been so many things, so many, I think, kingdoms from the past that have left some footprints. There was, the colonial parts of Bangalore that have been left. All of these are, I think, parts of Bangalore only. I think there is a vibrant food culture that is quintessentially Bangalore. I think throwing light on the food street that we talked about is quintessentially. I think culturally there are so many differences still between each of these cities. I think food is the first thing that comes automatically. I think if you convert it to any other art forms and the footprints that there are, I think the architecture of, let's say, a Bombay has been different from a Jaipur, from, let's say, a Hampi, from a different part. So I don't have a great answer except
Maybe I can try, just adding on to so Harsha was saying. So look at what we've been able to preserve. While I agree with you that there is a noodle bar, but there is a Vidyarthi Bhavan. Believe you me, like even on a holiday, if you go there, 45 minutes to an hour you have to wait to get a place to have dosa. And therefore, sort of there is love for that recipe. There's love for that sort of Bangalorean dosa. Similarly, in art forms, if you go to MLR Convention Center, there's something happening. There's a lot of people coming, and so on and so forth. I think what he was trying to allude to is the architectural aspect of cities. So when you go down EGL versus you go down sort of whatever the BKC, for example, it's hard to say. Right, and I think that's what Harsha was mentioning, that even if within the and to his point, Jodhpur have been able to preserve a lot of that. So when you are in Jodhpur, you know you are in Jodhpur. So I think that kind of association and ability to kind of recreate some of that architectural identity in cities which have rich history is probably, it can associate with the city much more in that form.
But as I mentioned, firstly, I only fully meant architectural, at least that, because that is your first view into the city. And you can tell how many cities are different. They have their own thing. So that was architecture. At the same time, I do think that it is a first world problem, which is why it's not something maybe we should urgently solve in the next 20, 30 years. But it would be nice if 200 years later, 5 generations later, it looks a little bit more like India and a little less like any corporate or what, any regular industrial town in the world.
Yeah, actually, it doesn't have to be a first world problem, because like we've seen instances of that even in India, right? Like Lucknow, Hazratganj Market, all your boards are in black and white in a particular font, and so it gives a particular feel to that area, right? And similarly, I think even Jaipur, local markets, they are all of a particular size.
That Jodi area is incredible. Yeah. When it lights up at night, you're like, what amazing part of the world. That was a truly inspiring moment when I went in January this year, saying, okay, this is amazing. Yeah, I agree.
I had 2 questions. Like, first one was when you mentioned about vehicles for contribution, right? Like, what kind of vehicles have you, were you thinking of, and have you seen working? One is, of course, say, unboxing Bangalore, happening, bringing things together, running it maybe throughout the year in different forms, or like special times of the year. Are there like other vehicles? I've seen, like, for example, Map Museum, right? Like as a museum, it's been created as an institution. So many people have contributed to make it happen. How do you extend that to, say, you said music, you said food, you said like architecture, like there are so many aspects of culture to tap into, right? And each might require its own kind of vehicle. But did you have any special vehicles that you have seen working and you're thinking of when you said next year you would want to work on something?
No, I think next year the plan is to talk more about maybe an early version of a foundation. We're still figuring out how the bootstrap funding happens, but eventually I think the work on figuring out economically regenerative models is still out for us. But at this point, I think the only obvious idea that I have is there seems to be like bootstrap possibilities by connecting HNIs and corporates who are passionate about specific topics. Some may be passionate about some other topic. Even this building came because Nandan and many other entrepreneurs decided to change, like, some part of the culture of Bangalore. Like that, I'm hopeful that if you go lower in demands, maybe there are various ways to maybe change, like a park in one part of town. It doesn't take billionaires or this thing. It can take five well-to-do but not crazy well-to-do folks also to come together to figure out how that vehicle can come to life is the starting point. Honestly, I would love to hear any ideas on the sidelines for
I actually had one thing that Swiggy itself tried, right? Like the minis concept that you had introduced.
minis. Yeah.
They were their own vehicle of sorts for bringing people together. I saw they brought a smile to me, right? When I looked at small entrepreneurs trying to create their own homegrown versions of cultural food, handicrafts and other things, and trying to put it up on Swiggy. Wonder why you decided to discontinue with that.
We just couldn't do what we set out to do even for the small businesses in a big way. It wasn't creating impact of the size that we thought we could. Simple answer. But I do think that there are interesting opportunities using Swiggy, because if Swiggy is a hyperlocal app and a lot of people use it often enough, I've thought about maybe fun interventions like you're opening the app and maybe instead of always selling you something on the masthead, we can just say, beautiful wall painting happened right next to you. Do you want to check it out? There are ways that we can use the business that we are in, because we are hyperlocal. Every work that gets done eventually will be hyperlocal in this theme, because it's not going to be one mega structure. In fact, it is the entire opposite of that. It has to be millions of little lifts that keep getting created in different pockets of the city. Maybe we can be an engine for amplifying the work that gets done. That makes it more exciting. Maybe that's another small flex.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Congratulations on the IPO, firstly.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. The first one for Swiggy itself. Zepto recently launched Zepto Cafe as a separate app. In response to that, Zomato came up with Bistro. My question to you is Swiggy also going to be involved in the wars here and going to present? I know Swiggy is a super app in itself, but what does it look like from the inside when market penetration comes into the question in terms of capturing more of the market share and getting deep inside the mind and the pockets of the residents of Bangalore or any other city for that matter?
I can't go too many specifics, but if it's a war, but an exciting war that consumers will love the outcome of, we'll be there.
So you're going to wait and watch?
I can't say anything specific at this point.
I have another question for you. I think ma'am wonderfully put out a great insight of waste management being discoverable through an app. If you were to imagine that or make that happen, not alone with Swiggy, with other players like Blinkit, Zomato, and other HNIs and whatever corporates involved, what do you think it's going to take to fix the problems of Bangalore per se through the engines that you have built? Whether it could be discovery, searching, or just enabling infrastructure through any which way possible.
I mean, it's been 7 minutes since she's talked about it. I don't have many fully formed thoughts on it, unfortunately. We have to think some more. I don't know. Honestly, what we know is that if it involves route planning, if that is a problem, then that's something that we can get involved with. If it's about, obviously, building, a new piece of app that has a life beyond just tracking waste management, that's also something that we can do. Do some, fun open source work where anyone can contribute, but it's really the community app. It doesn't exist. Nothing like it exists today. But we'll have to, those are, some simple ways that I can think of. What does that My City or My Hood app look like?
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Mani M. Nagasubramanian.
Hi.
I'm in the business of creating branded environments. Now, we need more of Jugaad innovation or frugal innovation and smart ideas to make smart cities. And my company was involved in making parts of Guntur, Ongole, and Kurnool smart city. Not the whole city, but the X kilometers which were given by the government. Now, this was government and my client, which is a telecom infrastructure company, which wanted to develop this. As you said, the government should come forward. But in this case, except for the downtown Hyderabad, the other three cities or the towns, it didn't take place at all because the government was not willing to accede to the not the demands, the requirements of the telecom infrastructure company. Now, my point is, we need to have a lot of innovative ideas and smart ideas like Swiggy in developing the smart environment or city more than only the economic aspects which were both of you focused on, but it's very critical. But I feel that we need more of innovative ideas and smart ideas to make the cities better and culturally enriched.
Could you share any examples of what they might look like? Maybe you've had a chance to think through them.
Like if a city is famous for one particular flower, that particular flower will be brought about in the downtown area, and or the values of certain dance or any performance, any cultural aspects that ought to be considered bringing it out to the different parts of the 7 kilometers in Ongole or 17 kilometers in Guntur. But the problem was the whatever was expected from the government was not coming forward to give it to the company for their investments of time and money and efforts.
Correct.
So it just didn't take place. I'm just giving one of the examples. And my company is 31 years old, and we haven't succeeded in making smart city initiatives, which was there in the about few years ago. You would have heard of every city trying to become themselves a smart city.
Got it.
And look, smart idea is very important, sir, because we are a resource-starved country, so we cannot be not smart. Like, that's not a choice.
Hi, my name is Netra. I'm your okay. So, as part of Bangalore Hubba, from the past couple of days, I've been part of BLR walks where we walk on footpaths in Bangalore. And it's crazy to think about it, but we actually have walked around 60 to 70 kilometers just on the footpath in Bangalore.
Amazing.
It's just that we really don't think about it. And also, like in the last 6 days I've walked, I remember someone was mentioning like, we don't really have a lot of things to do in Bangalore and we don't have the history. We just have a lot of history. It's just that it's, we only rely on Instagram. Hey, yeah, is there. There's like a largest brewery, largest mall opening. So even as a localite, we only think that is all Bangalore is. Because we walk past MG Road every single day, a lot of times weekly once at least. But we really don't see that there's so much history. Bangalore's IT revolution started over there. So nobody really knows where, for example, like Wipro started the first ever building in the MG Road, and there's so much there. It's just that we don't have a right platform, and people just like marketing it.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if you go to any of the European countries, it's just like one plaza, but people pay there to go. But in Bangalore, it's not just in Bangalore, I would say India, the way we market about a couple of places is not there at all. And one more thing I would like to say, because I'm a backpacker, we always, a lot of people in Bangalore are like people come here for work. And a lot of times we get lost between like working and like managing the work-life balance and everything. We forget we are like also a tourist in the city. So we kind of forget to explore those part of heritage. So that's one thing. Because in the last 6 days, I'm born and brought up in Bangalore, but there are a lot of places which I just came to know through these walks. And that's one of the reasons walking, pedestrian walking is really not part of government. It's just about making metros, making highways, cutting down trees. So making better pedestrian walks will help better on that part. And I really like her idea of making mobility because we do have for example, Namayatri came up because there was just so much commission going on with Uber, Ola. So very similarly, I think as a smart city, we can come up with something smart to help with the garbage and so many other things. So yeah, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to.
No, that's clear. See, I think the good news is, I don't know how much of it is already public, but I think Bangalore is going to see a lot more of this in the next few years. I know the government is thinking about it. I know even Unbox Bangalore is part of that broader initiative. But I think every country has to go through its motions, because we are at the moment where we are starting to have a lot of pride about being Indian. It wasn't there that much maybe in the background. So with that comes these, also it's the right timing. So even if it existed, maybe it wasn't great timing. But as I see it now, we are on that wave. And at the same time, I see government starting to think about this. So I think maybe in a few years we will have a couple of these museums. That's what I'm told. We have, the rich history of overall Bangalore, but the tech history of Bangalore, there are so many parts of Bangalore that I think can come out, for example. But I do hope that these plans will come through.
I just have my name is Mustafa.
Hi, Mustafa.
And I've been born and brought up in Calcutta, which I left many years back. And I've been recently visiting, and I noticed something very lovely happening to that city now. All the electricity and telephone boxes, of which there are many on the footpath, have got painted with a cultural icon. So you can imagine about 500 or 700 of these all across the city suddenly has a painting, a graphic of some cultural icon. People doing theatre, people doing cinema, people doing natak, people doing music, etc. A citizen called Mudar Patharia, he's taken on himself to raise money from many people and light up the old monuments which have been neglected. So some of them have been touched up, and suddenly the whole thing is lit up. These are very small, easy things, not involving the government at all. So I was hearing you talk about, we can just paint a wall or a mural, something. I think if we can have many more ideas and somebody just takes it up and runs with it rather than making a centralized plan, I think there's a lot of possibility.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you. I think building on top is the easiest and the lowest hanging fruit instead of building afresh. And we have enough opportunity, millions of opportunities across the cities. Like I said, it could be painting a wall, painting a manhole, cleaning a beach. Maybe people like cleaning a beach more than just cleaning a road. So let's create more of those. That's more smiles and less of the less frowns variety. So I do think that there's a lot of possibility. It just needs one way to start a movement. And I hope someone starts it very, very soon.
Yeah, hi. My name is Ashish. I missed a little bit of, the beginning of what you said, so you can respond if you already. Why does livability is like a basic fundamental right? People don't look at it that way, but if you can't walk or you can't appreciate beauty, that should be a basic fundamental right. Why does it need to be economically regenerated? It's because there are some things, commons, which have to be paid for by public money. So
okay, but that involves having it as an absolute government priority already.
True.
That is the reason, because I think the government has multiple priorities ahead of it, as it rightfully should. So this happens to be like experimental, maybe at best, saying okay, let's try and do something. But I don't think we're at a time when we're going to witness a whole movement in capital allocation from the government against every other choice that any government has in India. That is the reason.
Yeah, I know from the government. What I'm saying is private people give money.
Private people, part of it can always be, donations. Some way as a vehicle for folks to contribute. Donation of time, donation of skill, donation of money. But if that can in itself be such a large movement, maybe we don't need it. But if you want to do more of this, you can't do it if it's all donation-led. I mean, the Sundar Nursery example that I talked about, they charge $50 a pop. I think maybe it allows them to do one more of this. If they made it free, then that is it. Then it has an expiry date of how long you can do that. So if you want continuity, then it comes from being able to fund more of it.
Yeah, no, I'll just say you can keep it in mind that it's not necessary that the corporate way of thinking will apply to all other spheres. So, for example, in CSR, also I work in the social sector, they'd say, how will it be sustainable? So some things can't be sustainable. They need support. Anyway, there's no point. I'm just saying that there could be another way of looking at it. Just something.
I'm all ears. Like I said, this is just like a year and a half's inspiration work, and I'm already getting a lot of energy from so many ideas bubbling. It looks like a lot of folks feel that this movement's time should come.
Probably one last question, if there is one. Okay.
So
Please go ahead.
So you mentioned about more smiles and small flexes. So like everyone would love to do that, but if you can just share how did you if you're planning to set that up as a culture at Swiggy as well? Because I feel that this kind of mentality is infectious, and once you are in that community with that mentality, then only it propagates further. So if this is already a culture at Swiggy, then how did you set it up?
No, I think more smiles is today we deliver it only through the parts that we are already in. I haven't talked up anything that we may do in the future before it's real, but as the time comes closer, I'm going to get people more excited about more smiles outside of, let's say, business lines. It's easy enough to talk about, because there isn't a single all hands meeting where we don't talk about why we are doing this. Every chance I get, I talk about the why. It is not, to be the largest this or largest that or this many billion. I think the real reason we are excited about is to give more smiles amidst the many frowns that folks have to endure living in the cities. To that extent, it is a way of life for us. But I think for the broader, being an even bigger ally to the city, I haven't unveiled too much here yet.
Just one last one, Darsh.
Yeah. So you mentioned a platform where everybody can come together, participate. I mean, just looking at the problems today, right? So what would it take to start something tomorrow, right? People of influence like you, why would you not start something like tomorrow itself? Why not at least like a task force, like something was set up for UPI, ONDC back in. What would it take to start something tomorrow? Collaborate for everybody to collaborate.
I think Pash, you can take that up with Ravi. I think this is right up his alley. But that's a fair point. I think it's high time we should.
Yeah, someone should start it tomorrow. I just need some more time. I think how do we do that? I think anyone literally can start a movement, but it is going to take its own time and mind share to get things done. If there are willing allies, I think it can get started. I can be a smaller part even earlier.
Absolutely. And by the way, this is one of the best discussions. I've been part of many such panels and discussions and so forth. I think the kind of engagement that we have seen from all of you is amazing. So clearly,
Ashu said there aren't too many questions. It's a small audience. I was like, okay, but for me, this is amazing. This is amazing. See how many folks feel for it.
Absolutely. Yes. Clearly, I think this is front and center for a number of us, and I think this is probably just the start of this conversation. We should continue to keep having this time and again. I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the city, and we owe it to the country. With that, a huge round of applause to you yourself. I mean, this is an amazing audience. And
thank you. Thank you so much.